We started this thing on July the 25th. We ended today on September the 8th. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Derry. This is bet.nola.com, powered by the Dattitude Podcast, and it's the New Orleans Saints, the 32nd of 32 2023 NFL team previews. You know, some people said I wouldn't make it through, that who knows what might happen, but I made it through. Well, at least in 10 minutes, I will have made it through. You stuck with us the whole way. What do we think about the New Orleans Saints? Yesterday, we told you the Carolina Panthers would finish 10-7. We didn't want to tell you where that would be in the NFC South. Today, we wrap up the NFC South and the NFL by giving you our best predictions on the home team, at least here in New Orleans, the Saints, coming up next. Well, hello, my friends. Where you at? The New Orleans Saints started last season with high hopes, and it ended with a big, fat dud in a 10-7 loss to the Carolina Panthers in the Caesars Superdome, ending the hopes and dreams of all the people who thought that 7.5 wins was a sure thing, over 7.5 was a sure thing. You can't lose. Some prognosticator on this same social media channel said this time last year, you cannot lose if you bet the New Orleans Saints over 7.5 wins. What a donkey. That donkey was wrong. Came down to an Eddie Pinheiro field goal at the end of the game. The Saints played like they couldn't wait for the season to be over. They probably couldn't wait. It didn't mean anything. And it ended with a firework, a shoo-shoo, as we would call it here in New Orleans. Well, they opened the season with Jameis Winston, the quarterback. That didn't work out very well. They were 1-2. They lost to the Carolina Panthers. Winston was hurt. In came Andy Dalton, performed fairly well against Minnesota, and I guess that was good enough to win him the job because Andy Dalton did exactly what many of us thought, including this. You know, I got the thing wrong about the Saints over 7 wins. You know, I got that wrong. But what I did get right is I think someone here said Andy Dalton was a surefire recipe to have a losing season. That's what he was. The Michael Thomas saga dragged into its third season. He played in just 3 games, caught only 16 passes for 171 yards. He has now played in 10 games. Out of the last 50, he's played in 10 of them. This year's going to be different, by God. Oh, and remember how Jarvis Landry was supposed to be the key veteran signing? Well, he started just 3 games as well, and he's now out of football. But there was good news. I don't want to be Derry Downer. I don't want you to think I'm just going to say the Saints are going 3-14 or whatever you think right now. There was definitely good news. Rashid Shaheed was quite defined as a receiver and as a kick returner. Tight end Juwan Johnson earned himself a nice little 2-year, $12 million contract. And also on offense, it seems like Jameis Winston's okay with being a backup after all. He's now still on the team. He's going to play behind Derek Carr, as most of you know. And the defense had, for the 3rd straight year, we're in the top 7 and yards allowed per game. They finished 5th overall, 2nd against the pass. Future Hall of Famer Cam Jordan led the team with 8.5 sacks. Demario Davis, not surprisingly, was the team leader in tackles. I believe he had 109 tackles. The question is, can they create more turnovers in 2023? Because they are going to have to. And the reason's pretty simple. 7 wins we know is going to cut it. 8 wins is going to cut it. 9 wins is going to cut it. And if you watched yesterday's show and believe what I had to say, whether you believe it's Carolina or Atlanta, 10 wins might not even cut it. So to improve by a minimum of 3 wins, probably 4 wins, they were 30th in the league in turnovers created last year. That leads us to the offense. It took us this long to get into talking about Derek Carr. Not only the signing for the Saints, but the most expensive signing in the NFL this entire offseason, free agent signing. 4 years, $150 million. And like we asked the question, if you read the type on top of the photo when we first started with this intro, and in case you didn't look at it, we'll show it to you. I asked the question, is Derek Carr the quarterback to help Saints fans move on from Drew Brees? I don't know how many times I've said this. I mean, I don't know how many times I have to say it. Drew Brees is gone, and he's never coming back. But Saints fans can't seem to let that go. They couldn't let it go with Jameis Winston. They certainly couldn't let it go the year before that in Sean Payton's last season when there was a revolving door at quarterback. It was Jameis Winston. It was Taysom Hill. It was Trevor Siemian. It was even Ian Book for a game. Boy, was that a disaster. So it's been hard to move on, and obviously it's going to be hard. But Derek Carr is that kind of quarterback. He is the kind of quarterback that helped this team move on. He only threw for 3,522 yards, but look at the season before. And the 3 seasons before that, he had 4 consecutive 4,000-yard seasons. In fact, in 2021, he threw for a career high 4,804 yards, 23 touchdowns. If you give Derek Carr time, he is going to pick you apart. And that's what the Saints are hoping for here, especially with the schedule that we're going to talk about in just a moment. But it all starts with the offensive line. We said it in our report on bet.nola.com. The what needs to go right and the what needs to go right segment. You can talk about Derek Carr all day long. You talk about Alvin Kamara when he comes back from his suspension. But this offensive line has got to avoid, you can't even say injuries. I think they have to avoid one injury. I have said this for over a month, and I still believe it. I think this offensive line is one major injury away from catastrophe. Can they avoid that major injury? If they can, they'll be good enough to protect for Derek Carr. They'll be good enough to get that running game up from 19th last year, and the total offense certainly should improve from 19th because we know the passing game is going to be better than 16th. We haven't even talked about Chris Olave. Chris Olave is not only a number 1 receiver on this team, I think this is the year in his sophomore season where he could become a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I really believe that. I think this kid is a superstar in the making, and it's another reason why I take some of the pressure off of Michael Thomas. He doesn't have to be that guy before that was catching 120, 130 passes a year for 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns or whatever it is. He doesn't have to be that guy because Chris Olave can be that guy. And schedule time. This is what we have been gauging teams by and how easy or how hard their schedule is. And look, I mean, when we talk about how we've judged what the ratings of the schedules, it's based off of formulas derived off of Caesars Sportsbook. The Saints have the easiest schedule in the NFL according to our formula. And if you don't use our formula and you use what most other people use, and that's win totals from last year, the Saints still have the second easiest schedule in the NFL. The problem is, if there is a problem, is the way that it sets up. The first third of this schedule is the toughest. If the Saints can somehow find a way to go 4-2 through this first third of a schedule, which is reasonable, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's certainly reasonable. You play 4 after the Tennessee game on Sunday. You play 4 out of your next 5 on the road. Then you get into the second half, the second third of the season, I guess. Jacksonville on a Thursday night, and then it does open up a little bit because I think the Saints are going to be clearly better than Indianapolis. I think they're clearly better than Chicago. Get them at home. Minnesota, they're what, and then they get their bye week at a pretty good time, I think. Week 11. And then after they play at Atlanta the Sunday after Thanksgiving, look what's coming up. 4 out of the final 6 games at home, including a 3-game stretch December 3rd, 10th, and 17th against Detroit, Carolina, and the Giants. Theoretically, the Saints could go on a roll. That's if the O-line holds up. So what do we think? Our final drum roll, please, of this preview campaign. I'm going to predict that the Saints are going to win the division. I told you yesterday that I thought Carolina was the best value, and I absolutely believe that. Carolina is 5-1. If they play this division race 5 times in a bubble, in a virtual bubble, Carolina's going to win at least 1, maybe twice, because I think that Carolina and the Saints are the only 2 teams who can win this division. I know a lot of people are picking Atlanta. I think Atlanta's still a ways away. I don't think Desmond Ridder is ready for that. I like the over 9.5 wins. I do think they will win over 9.5. I went back and forth. I hate the fact that I'm with the local media again for the 2nd straight year, but I don't know how you pick the Saints to not win more than 9.5 games. I'm not saying, like last year, that I'm positive it's the best bet ever. Not saying that, but I think it's a good bet. And what I really like at plus 4,500, just if you put $10 on it, $5. If you put $10 on it and it happens, you're going to win 450. Derek Carr to win the NFL MVP, and go get you some value. Go put $1 on it. Buck wins you 45 if it happens. Why not? Have a little fun with it. And we have had fun the the past 7 weeks doing this again. I'm not 100% sure we're going to do it the same way next year. We'll have to wait and see. But for those of you that have watched all of these things, or even most of them, I am very grateful to you. I am. It's been a nice ride since July 25th to today on September the 8th, or whenever you're watching this. It's been a fun ride. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in 2024.